It was a bright, sunny Saturday afternoon in Maple Grove. This was a small, quiet neighborhood where houses sat in neat rows and kids rode bikes down the street. Everyone knew everyone, or at least that's what they thought. The trees were green, the birds were singing, and everything seemed peaceful. But something big was about to shake things up. Say hello to Jake Turner. He was the new guy who just moved in. Jake rolled up in an old, beat-up truck that made funny noises when it stopped. The truck was rusty and the paint was peeling off the sides. He carried a toolbox in one hand, full of hammers and screwdrivers that clinked together. When he stepped out, he waved at anyone who looked his way. He had a big, friendly smile, like he was happy to be there. But most people didn't wave back. They just stared for a second and then turned away. Jake wasn't fancy. His hair was messy, sticking out all over like he hadn't brushed it in days. His sneakers were old, with holes in the toes and laces that didn't match. His jeans had dirt on them and his shirt was wrinkled. When people saw him, they thought, oh, he's just some poor kid, probably renting that old house because he can't afford anything better. They saw the truck, the sneakers, and the messy hair, and they made up their minds. Jake didn't belong in Maple Grove, at least that's what they decided. But here's the thing, Jake had a secret, a big one. It was like a surprise hiding in his pocket, something nobody could guess just by looking at him. He wasn't who they thought he was, not even close. And soon everyone would find out, but not yet. For now, he was just the new guy unpacking boxes and trying to settle in. Across the street from Jake's house lived Karen Miller. Oh boy, Karen was something else. She was the boss of the neighborhood, or at least she acted like it. Karen was the queen of the HOA. That's the group that makes rules for the neighborhood, like how tall your grass can be or what color your mailbox should be. Karen loved those rules. She loved them so much she carried a little notebook everywhere, writing down anything that wasn't perfect. Karen was the kind of person who always peeked out her window. Her curtains would twitch and there she'd be watching. If a kid left a toy in the yard, she'd see it. If someone parked their car a little crooked, she'd notice. And if anything broke her rules, she'd march right over to tell you about it. She had short hair that was always perfect, and she wore bright red lipstick that made her look serious. Her voice was loud, and when she talked, people listened, even if they didn't want to. The second Jake moved in, Karen didn't like him. His house, it drove her crazy. The grass wasn't cut short enough. It stuck up a little, like it was saying, I don't care about your rules. The mailbox light, the one that's supposed to glow at night, kept flickering. On, off, on, off. It wasn't steady, and that bugged her. And don't even get her started on that truck. It sat in the driveway, all rusty and loud, like it was laughing at her perfect neighborhood. To Karen, Jake's house was a big mess, and she couldn't stand it. She stood on her porch that first day, arms crossed, staring at Jake. He was carrying a box inside, and he waved at her. Hi there, he called, all friendly. Karen didn't wave back. She just frowned and shook her head. This guy's trouble, she muttered to herself. I can tell he's going to ruin everything. She already had her notebook out, writing down all the things she didn't like. Grass too long, she scribbled. Truck ugly, mailbox light broken. Karen had made up her mind. Jake was bad news, and she was going to do something about it. But here's the fun part, Karen didn't know everything. She thought she was so smart, watching everyone and making her lists. She thought she had Jake all figured out. Poor kid, messy house, no manners, that's what she saw. But Jake, he wasn't worried about her, not one bit. He'd smile and nod when she glared at him like he didn't care. Why? Because trouble wasn't coming for Jake. Nope, trouble was about to knock on Karen's door instead, and she had no idea. Let's rewind a little. That Saturday afternoon, when Jake pulled up in his truck, the neighborhood was buzzing. Kids were playing outside, riding scooters and tossing balls. Moms and dads sat on porches, sipping lemonade and chatting. It was a normal day until Jake showed up. People peeked out their windows as he unloaded his stuff. "Who's that?" they whispered. "Never seen him before." A lady named Mrs. Carter, who lived next door, watched him carry a chair inside. "He looks young," she said to her husband. "Probably doesn't have much money." Mr. Carter nodded. "That truck's a junker. Bet he's just renting." They didn't say it to be mean, they were just curious. New people didn't move to Maple Grove very often. It was a place where the same families lived for years. Everyone had their spot, their routine. Jake, he didn't fit, at least not yet. Down the street, a kid named Tommy rode his bike past Jake's house. He slowed down to look. Jake was hammering something by the porch, fixing a loose step. "Hey kid," Jake called, waving. Tommy waved back, but then he pedaled away fast. He didn't know what to think. Jake seemed nice, but everyone was already talking. "He's weird," Tommy's friend said later. "My mom says he doesn't belong here." Karen heard all the whispers and they made her even madder. She didn't just think Jake was weird, she thought he was a problem, a big one. That night she stood in her living room looking out her window. Jake was in his garage, the light on, working on something. She couldn't see what, but it annoyed her. "Who works that late?" she grumbled. "He's up to no good, I know it." The next morning she was at it again. Jake was outside watering some plants he'd put by the porch. The grass still wasn't cut and that mailbox light, it flickered all night. Karen marched over, her notebook in hand. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp. Jake looked up, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Hi," he said, smiling. "Nice day, huh?" Karen didn't smile back. "Your grass is too long," she snapped. "And that light, it's broken, fix it. This is a nice neighborhood and we have rules." Jake nodded. "Okay, ma'am," he said, "I'll get to it." His voice was calm, like he wasn't mad at all. Karen huffed and walked away thinking she'd won, but Jake, he just watched her go, a little grin on his face. He wasn't scared of her, not one bit. Days went by and Karen kept watching. Every time Jake did something, she had something to say. If he parked his truck a little off, she'd complain. If he left a tool outside, she'd write it down. She even knocked on his door once, holding a paper with HOA rules. "Read this," she said, shoving it at him. "You need to follow these or there'll be trouble." Jake took the paper and said, "Thanks, I'll look at it." But Karen didn't feel better, she felt worse. Something about Jake bugged her, and she couldn't figure out why. The neighbors started talking more. "Poor Jake," Mrs. Carter said one day. "Karen's after him, she won't let up." Mr. Carter laughed. "She's like a hawk, he doesn't stand a chance." They felt bad for Jake, but they didn't do anything. They just watched like it was a show. And Jake, he kept smiling, kept waving, kept acting like everything was fine. But deep down, he knew something they didn't. He had a plan, a big one. So what do you think, friends? Was Karen right to judge Jake so fast? Did she see a troublemaker or was she just being mean? Stick around, because this story about to get wild. Jake's secret is hiding right around the corner, and when it comes out, oh boy, Karen's in for a surprise she'll never forget. Keep reading because you won't believe what happens next. From the very first day Jake moved into Maple Grove, Karen made his life tough. She didn't waste any time. The minute she saw something she didn't like, she'd grab her clipboard and march across the street. That clipboard was her favorite thing. It was small, with a pen tied to it, and she used it to write down every rule Jake broke, or at least the rules she thought he broke. She'd stand on his porch, her shoes tapping the wood, and bark at him like a teacher scolding a kid. "That mailbox light's too bright," she'd snap, pointing at it with her pen. "It's a safety hazard. Someone could trip or get confused at night." Her voice was loud and her eyes were narrow, like she was daring him to argue. Jake didn't argue though. He'd just look at her, nod his head and smile. "I'll fix it, ma'am," he'd say, nice and polite. His voice was soft, not mad at all. But Karen didn't trust that smile, not one bit. She'd huff, turn around, and stomp back to her house, muttering under her breath. "Riffraff," she'd grumble. "He's ruining this street. I knew he was trouble." Karen thought Jake was just some messy kid who didn't belong in her perfect neighborhood. She didn't like his old truck, his long grass, or that flickering mailbox light. Every time she looked out her window and saw his house, she got madder. She wanted everything neat and tidy, and Jake, he wasn't neat or tidy. To her, he was like a weed popping up in her perfect garden, and she was determined to pull that weed out. But here's the thing, Jake didn't seem to mind, not even a little. Karen would yell and he'd just keep smiling. He'd go back to whatever he was doing, like her words didn't bother him at all. At night, when the stars were out and the street was quiet, Jake would stay up late. He'd be in his garage, working on that rusty truck. The garage light would glow, spilling yellow across the driveway and onto the street. You could hear little clinks and clanks, tools hitting metal as he fixed something. Sometimes he'd hum a song, soft and happy. Karen didn't sleep much. She'd sit by her window, peeking through the curtains, watching him. That light bugged her. "Why's he up so late?" she'd mutter to herself. "Normal people don't do that. He's up to something sneaky, I bet." She'd grab her clipboard and scribble notes. "Garage light on at 10 p.m., she wrote one night. "Truck noises at midnight," she added the next. She was keeping a list like a detective in a movie. Every time she saw Jake, she added something new. She thought she was so smart, catching him being bad. But what Karen did know, Jake was watching her too. Oh yeah, he saw everything. He'd be outside watering his plants or sweeping the porch and he'd notice her staring. He saw how she'd yell at the delivery guy when a package was late. "Put it by the door, not on the step," she'd shout, waving her arms. He saw how she'd boss the neighbors around, telling them their trash cans were too close to the curb. "Move it back 2 feet," she'd demand, like she owned the whole street. Now Jake didn't say anything, but he was keeping track, quietly, carefully, like he had a list of his own, only it was in his head, not on paper. The neighbors started to notice the trouble between Jake and Karen. They'd sit on their porches, sipping juice or playing cards, and whisper about it. "Poor Jake," Mrs. Carter said one day. She lived next door and liked to knit blankets. "Karen's after him all the time. She won't leave him alone." Her husband, Mr. Carter, nodded. "She's got him in her crosshairs," he said, laughing a little. "Like a hunter with a deer, he's done for." They felt sorry for Jake. He seemed nice, always waving and saying hi. But Karen, She was like a storm cloud following him around. One afternoon, Karen came over again. This time it was about the truck. Jake had parked it in the driveway, but one tire was just a tiny bit on the grass. Karen saw it from her window and couldn't stand it. She marched over, her clipboard flapping in her hand. "Your truck on the lawn," she yelled, pointing at the tire. "That's against the rules. Move it now." Jake was sitting on his porch drinking a soda. He looked up, smiled, and said, "Okay, ma'am, I'll fix it." He didn't argue. He just got up, slow and easy, and moved the truck a few inches. Karen stood there, arms crossed, watching him like a hawk. "Better," she said, but she didn't sound happy. She turned and walked away, muttering again. "Lazy kid," she said, "no respect." Jake watched her go. He didn't say a word, but his eyes were sharp. He saw how she held that clipboard like a shield. He saw how she glared at everyone, not just him, and he kept it all in his head like pieces of a puzzle he was putting together. Karen thought she was the boss, but Jake, he wasn't scared, not even a little. He'd go back to his garage that night, tinkering with his truck, humming his song. The light would glow, and Karen would watch, and the game would go on. A few days later, something else happened. Jake was outside, fixing a loose board on his fence. He had a hammer and some nails, banging away in the sunshine. Karen saw him from her porch and decided it was too loud. She stormed over, her face red. "Stop that noise," she shouted. "It's bothering everyone." Jake stopped hammering and looked at her. "Sorry, ma'am," he said. "I'll keep it down." He smiled again, that same calm smile. Karen didn't like it. "You better," she snapped, and off she went back to her house. She wrote it down, of course. "Hammering too loud," she scribbled. "Rude." The neighbor saw that too. Tommy, the kid with the bike, was riding by and stopped to watch. "She's mean," he said to his friend later. "Jake, not even doing anything bad." His friend nodded. "My dad says Karen's crazy. She yells at everybody." They laughed, but they kept their voices low. Nobody wanted Karen to hear them. She had ears like a bat, always listening. By now, Jake had been in Maple Grove for a couple of weeks. Every day, Karen found something new to complain about. If his trash can was out too early, she'd tell him. If his mailbox light blinked, she'd yell. If he waved at her, she'd frown. She was like a dog with a bone she wouldn't let go, and Jake, he just kept being nice. "Yes, ma'am," he'd say. "I'll fix it, ma'am," over and over like a broken record. But behind that smile, something was brewing, something big. One night, Karen was up late again, watching Jake's garage. The light was on and he was inside, working. She saw him lift something heavy and put it in the truck. "What's that?" she whispered to herself. "He's hiding something, I knew it." She wrote it down, her pen scratching fast. "Sneaky stuff in garage," she added to her list. She thought she was catching him, building a case to get him in trouble. Maybe she'd call the HOA president. Maybe she'd call the cops. She wasn't sure yet, but she was ready to fight. But Jake wasn't worried, not one bit. He'd come out of the garage, wipe his hands on a rag, and look across the street. He'd see Karen's curtains move and he'd grin just a little. He wasn't mad. He wasn't scared. Why, well, that's the fun part, friends. We're getting there. Karen thought she had Jake all figured out. She thought he was just some kid she could boss around. But Jake was watching her too. Every yell, every note, every mean look, he saw it all, and he was keeping track. So what was Jake up to? Why didn't he care about Karen's barking? Stick with me, because this story's heating up. Karen's about to step into something she can't handle, and Jake, he's got a surprise that'll flip everything upside down. Keep reading, you won't want to miss it. Weeks went by in Maple Grove and things got crazier between Jake and Karen. Time didn't make Karen nicer, it made her bolder. She was like a cat chasing a mouse, and Jake was the mouse she wanted to catch. Every day she found something new to complain about. His grass was still too long, his truck was too loud, his mailbox light kept blinking. She'd march over with her clipboard, yell at him, and march back home. Jake would just smile and say, "I'll fix it, ma'am," like always. But Karen wasn't happy with that anymore. She wanted him gone. One night, something big happened. It was dark outside and the stars were twinkling. Karen was up late, as usual, peeking out her window. She saw Jake's mailbox light flashing again, on, off like it was dancing. That light had been bugging her for weeks. She told him to fix it over and over, but there it was, blinking like a disco ball. That was it. Karen had had enough. She couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her phone off the table, her hands shaking with anger, and dialed 911. "There's a disturbance," she shrieked into the phone. Her voice was loud and squeaky like a mad bird. "This guy across the street, his light is flashing like a disco. It's dangerous. Someone could get hurt." The operator on the other end tried to calm her down. "Ma'am, please take a deep breath," the operator said. "Is it really an emergency?" But Karen wouldn't listen. She was too worked up. "No, you don't get it," she yelled. "It's been going on forever. Send someone now." She slammed the phone down, crossed her arms, and smirked. She thought she'd finally won. The police would come, see the light, and tell Jake to shape up, or maybe even kick him out. Oh, she couldn't wait. Meanwhile, Jake was in his garage. He didn't know about Karen's call. He had headphones on, big ones that covered his ears, and he was listening to music. The garage light was on, glowing bright, and he was working on something under a tarp. The tarp was big and green, hiding whatever was underneath. Jake was busy, tapping his foot to the beat, moving tools around. Clink, clank, thud. He was fixing something, but nobody could see what. Not Karen's, not the neighbors, not even the little kid Tommy on his bike. Jake was in his own world, and he didn't hear a thing outside. Then a police cruiser rolled up the street. Its lights were off, so it was quiet, no sirens, no flashing red and blue. The car moved slow, like it didn't want to be noticed. Karen didn't see it at first. She was too busy standing by her window, grinning like she'd just won a prize. She thought the cops were coming for Jake. She thought they'd pull up to his house, knock on his door, and give him a big talking to. Finally, she whispered to herself, "He's in trouble now." But here's the kicker, those cops, they weren't there for Jake. Nope. The car didn't stop at his house. It kept going right past his driveway and parked in front of Karen's house instead. Two officers stepped out, their boots quiet on the pavement. They looked at her front door, not Jake. Karen didn't notice yet. She was still smirking, still thinking she'd beat him. Oh, how wrong she was. Something big was about to happen, and she had no clue. See, Jake had been busy all those weeks. He wasn't just fixing his truck or playing with that mailbox light. He'd been doing something else, something sneaky, something clever. He'd been digging, but not with a shovel. He was digging into secrets, finding things out, watching and waiting. Karen thought he was just a messy kid with a junky truck, but Jake was way more than that. He'd been working on a plan, a big one, and it was all coming together right now. Karen. She was about to step right into his trap, and she didn't even know it. Let's back up a bit. Those weeks before the police showed up, Jake had been acting strange, but only if you paid close attention. Most people didn't. The neighbors saw him tinkering in his garage and they thought, oh, he's just fixing stuff. Karen saw him too and she thought, he's up to no good. But nobody really knew what he was doing. Every night he'd be out there under that tarp working late. Sometimes he'd carry boxes inside, big ones, heavy ones. Other times he'd sit on his porch with a notebook, writing things down. Not like Karen's clipboard, though. His notebook was small and he kept it in his pocket, hidden away. One day, Tommy rode his bike past Jake's house and saw something odd. Jake was by the mailbox messing with the light. He had a screwdriver in his hand, twisting something. Tommy slowed down. "Whatcha doing?" he asked. Jake looked up and grinned. "Just fixing it," he said. "It's been blinking too much." Tommy nodded and rode off, but he thought it was funny. Karen kept yelling about that light, and Jake kept fixing it, but it never stopped blinking. Was he bad at fixing things, or was something else going on? Tommy didn't know, but it stuck in his head. Karen saw that too from her window. "He's pretending," she muttered. "He's not fixing anything, he's just lazy." She wrote it down, mailbox light still broken, and added it to her list. She was sure Jake was trying to annoy her on purpose. Every time she saw him outside, she got madder. One morning, he was sweeping his porch and she yelled, "Sweep faster, you're making dust." Jake just waved and kept sweeping, slow and steady. Another time, he was watering his plants and she shouted, "Don't flood the yard." He nodded and said, "Yes, ma'am," but he didn't change a thing. It drove her nuts. The neighbors started talking more. Mrs. Carter, the lady next door, watched from her porch. "He's so calm," she said to her husband. Karen yells and he just smiles. "Weird, huh?" Mr. Carter shrugged. "Maybe he's scared of her, or maybe he's just nice." They didn't know what to think. Jake didn't fight back. He didn't yell. He didn't even look mad. He just kept doing his thing, fixing, writing, watching. It was like he didn't care about Karen at all. But why? Then came that night with the 911 call. Karen was so proud of herself. She stood by her window waiting for the cops to show up. She imagined them knocking on Jake's door, telling him to stop being a problem. She even practiced what she'd say if they asked her. "He's been a nuisance since he got here," she'd tell them. "Look at my notes, I've got proof." She held her clipboard tight, ready to show it off. In her mind, she'd already won. Jake would be in big trouble, and she'd be the hero who saved the neighborhood. But outside, the police cruiser sat in front of her house. The officers walked up her steps, not Jake. Karen didn't see them yet. She was too busy dreaming about her victory. In the garage, Jake kept working, headphones on, tarp over his project. He didn't hear the car, he didn't see the cops. He was focused, calm, like always. But something was different tonight. The air felt heavy, like a storm was coming, and it was right to Karen's front door. What was Jake hiding under that tarp? Why wasn't he worried about Karen's calls and complaints? Little hints were starting to pop up. The mailbox light that never got fixed. The late nights in the garage, the notebook in his pocket. Jake wasn't just some kid messing around. He'd been digging into something big, and Karen was about to find out what. She thought she'd set a trap for him, but oh no, she'd walked right into his instead. Stick around, friends, this story's getting wilder. The cops are at Karen's door and Jake's secret is about to come out. What's he been up to all this time? You won't believe it when you hear it. Keep reading, the big surprise is next. The night was dark and quiet in Maple Grove, but inside Karen's house everything was about to change. Her doorbell rang ding-dong and she ran to answer it. She flung the door open so fast it banged against the wall. Karen was ready. She'd called 911 about Jake's blinking mailbox light, and she thought the police were finally here to fix her problem. She stood there, her hands on her hips, ready to point across the street and demand action. "It's about time," she said, her voice loud and sharp. "That kid's been a mess since he got here." But when she looked outside, something was wrong. Two police officers stood on her porch, their hats pulled low and their faces serious. They didn't look happy. They didn't look like they were here to help her. One of them, a tall guy with a deep voice, stared right at her. "Ma'am," he said, slow and calm, "we need to talk to you." The other officer, a shorter one with a mustache, stood next to him, holding a little notebook. Karen's face froze, her eyes got big and her mouth opened a little. "Me?" she said, her voice squeaky now. "What do you mean me? This isn't about that punk across the street." She pointed at Jake's house, her finger shaking. She was sure they'd come for him, that's why she called. His light was blinking, his truck was ugly, his grass was long. She'd told them all about it. They were supposed to go after him, not her. "Nope," the short cop said, shaking his head. He flipped open his notebook and looked at it. "This isn't about him, it's about you." He tapped the page with his pen like he had something important written there. "We got a tip. Seems you've been running an illegal side hustle, selling fake HOA fines to pocket the cash. You've been tricking people, taking their money and keeping it for yourself. Someone been watching you for weeks." Karen's jaw dropped. It hit the floor like a rock. She tried to talk, but her words got stuck. What?" she stammered. "Who told you that? That's crazy. I didn't do anything." Her face turned red, then white, then red again. She looked like she might fall over. The officers didn't move. They just watched her, waiting for her to stop talking. The tall one crossed his arms. "We've got proof," he said, "lots of it." Karen blinked fast. "Proof? What proof? Who's been watching me?" Her voice was loud now, almost a yell. She looked around like the answer might be hiding in her yard. Then the short cop turned his head. He nodded across the street toward Jake's house. "Him," he said, pointing with his thumb. "That guy over there." Karen spun around so fast she almost tripped. She looked across the street and there he was, Jake Turner. He wasn't in his garage anymore. He wasn't hiding under that tarp or messing with his truck. Nope. He was standing right there, leaning against his rusty old truck with his arms crossed. He had a big grin on his face, like he'd just won the lottery or found a treasure chest. His messy hair flopped in the breeze and his old sneakers glowed a little under the street light. He didn't look scared. He didn't look mad, he looked happy, like he'd been waiting for this moment all along. The tall cop stepped forward. "That punk you've been yelling at," he said. "He's not who you think. Meet Officer Jake Turner undercover. He's been tracking scams like yours for months." He said it loud enough for everyone to hear, and boy did they hear it. The neighbors, who'd been peeking out their windows all night, gasped. Mrs. Carter dropped her knitting needle. Mr. Carter spilled his coffee. Little Tommy, still awake past bedtime, pressed his nose to the glass and whispered, "No way." Karen's perfect little world flipped upside down. Her knees wobbled.